Hello, good afternoon, everyone, or whatever time it is for you right now. We're so pleased that you are joining us for Global Yoga Therapy Day 2023, whether live on August 14th or through a recording afterward. My name is Marita Greenidge, and I am C-IAYT's Marketing and Communications Manager. I'll be your host for this session, which runs through 5:30 Eastern Time, 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Each of our sessions today offers an experiential component so you can fully embody the information. So hopefully you'll have a bit of quiet space to yourself. All times have their own challenges. This is the nature of being human. So our main questions as we put together this year's program were, how can we more skillfully meet the unique and significant demands of our present moment? And two, how can yoga professionals remain true to yoga philosophy and bring clients all that the practices have to offer for growth and transformation while caring for themselves in these same environments? So let's go into our first presentation. This is Embodied Yoga Philosophy for Building Trauma Resilience Through Balancing Opposites with Maggie Reagh. Maggie Reagh is the founding director of Yoga Therapy International in Vancouver, Canada, where she runs an E-RYT accredited training program. She has been practicing yoga therapy for 12 years and teaching therapeutic yoga for 15 years. You can read Maggie's full bio at iayt.org/Global Yoga Therapy Day. Welcome, Maggie. It is so wonderful to have you join us today.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this session. I'm very excited to be presenting today on an embodied yoga philosophy practice for building trauma resilience through balancing opposites. I'm going to be taking you through about 30 minutes of lecture and then about 15 minutes of practice. And then we're going to take another 15 minutes or perhaps 10 to just analyze the practice a little bit so you can understand it better. So as you all know, as seasoned yogis, that our yoga practice is meant to balance the opposites of stiram and sukham, bringing us into a state of asanam. Stira sukhamasana. So this is from the Yoga Sutra, chapter 246. But many people don't know that going forward from here, it seems to be frozen. There we go. Going forward from here, Patanjali gives us a practice to balance these opposites and tells us the result. So he says with prayatna, with appropriate effort, we actually can release any unnecessary tension, shaitilya. And in such a state, we start to go into ananta samapatibhyam, which is a state of flow or infinite harmony. As a result of this practice of practicing Sthira Sukhamasana and Prayatna Shaitilya Ananta Samapatibhyam, chapter 2, 46, 47. As a result of this, by practicing this way, letting go of any unnecessary tension and overcoming these opposites within ourselves with this special effort, the pairs of opposites no longer trigger us, they no longer activate us. And as a result, we're free from these opposites. So what kinds of opposites might we be thinking about in yoga? We might be thinking about the inhale and the exhale as obvious somatic opposites, but there's also the obvious opposites that we talk about a lot in the Yoga Sutras, which are having dukkham, suffering, and kleshas, the cause of the suffering, these obscurations of mind. And where we're trying to move towards is kaivalyam, or freedom. The Bhagavad Gita also gives us some wisdom on how to become free of these opposites, these dvandvas. So it lists 5 pairs of opposites in chapter 12. And I think you'll find these quite interesting. Friends and enemies, fame and shame, hot and cold, joy and sorrow, praise and blame. So what's interesting about this list is that the first part of the opposite, most of us would actually like. So most of us would like to have more friends and fewer enemies, and more fame and less shame, and certainly feeling at least warm and not cold, and having abundant joy and as little sorrow as possible. And many of us crave appreciation or praise, and we're we have a lot of dvesha or aversion towards blame. So the Gita is inviting us to move into something beyond these 5 pairs of opposites. The other thing that you might think of, for those of you who study Ayurveda and Sankhya philosophy, you might think of the 10 pairs of opposites from Sankhya philosophy that are used very much in Ayurveda. So for example, hot and cold, those are those temperature differences. We want to account for those. We also do this as yoga therapists. When someone is too hot, we do cooling practices. When someone is too cold, we do warming practices. So we're always trying to bring the person to the center. And we're also working with having a clear mind versus a cloudy mind. So that's another pair. And another thing we can play with in yoga as well is speed. So there's quick or fast and slow. So in our practices, we can practice more quickly, or we can practice more slowly, and we can adjust where we are. But in this list again, even the hot and cold, the Gita is suggesting we want to overcome our aversion or our desire, raga, towards either of them. In chapter 248, the Gita speaks about karma yoga, which is very similar to Patanjali's definition of kriya yoga, the yoga of action, in chapter 2.1 in the Yoga Sutras. Samatvam yoga uchate. Yoga is equanimity of mind. This is the most famous phrase from this shloka. The Gita, as many of you will know, the main teaching of the Gita is to do our dharma, to act with purpose, to do what we think is right at any time, but do it in a spirit of equanimity. How do we gain that equanimous state of mind? We do this by learning to overcome these opposites within ourselves. And the Gita says to do that with the attitude of letting go of the results of your actions. So the main method of coming to this state of samatvam, this balanced state of mind, is through the practice of karma yoga, where you act, you do your dharma, you do what you think is right, and then you let go of the outcome, the result. Patanjali, he is forever practical, and I've been studying the sutras with my teacher, Mr. D.V. Sridhar, since I met him in 2001 at the Krishnamacharya Yoga Mandiram, and then also my teacher, Radha Sridhar, and my teacher, V.G. Basu. Mr. Sridhar has taught me much about this through my one-on-one studies with him on the Yoga Sutras. And one of the key teachings of Patanjali is about something called Pratipaksha Bhavanam. It's in the Yoga Sutras, chapter 2, 33. And this is a translation that we have come up with together through our studies. And he says, when disturbed by negative thoughts, consider an opposite perspective, cultivating positive thoughts. And reframing perceptions. So when we're finding it difficult to practice the yamas and the niyamas, our attitude towards others, our attitude towards ourselves, our ethics and our self-care. When we're practicing the yamas and the niyamas and we're having difficult doing it, and this is where most of us are, and the Yoga Sutra says this is where most of us are is in chapter 2 of the sutras, which is all about the sadhana or the practice. So when we find that we're unable to practice the yamas and the niyamas, the antidote is pratipaksha bhavanam. So when disturbed by something negative, we try to look at a negative thought, a negative belief, a negative experience, all those coming together. We try to look at things from an opposite perspective and we cultivate positive thoughts in the process. So he's saying the first step to achieving this balance, samatvam or upeksha or kaivalyam, all these Sanskrit words that are talking about being free from these opposites. If we're having trouble doing it, he very practically says, just start by replacing the negative with something positive. Very practical until we get to samatvam, that equanimity that the Gita points to. When I first learned this many years ago, over 25, from my teacher, D.V. Sridhar in Chennai, I was taken when the teachings of positive psychology started emerging around that same time, the early 2000s. I was really taken how there was a parallel teaching here. And Martin Seligman, who I have read everything he's written, big fan, he has a book called Learned Optimism, and he talks about the ABCs of overcoming negativity, and it's based on some earlier work by Dr. Ellis. And he adds on to these original ABCs with Dr. Ellis, and he adds on 2 more. So the first one is adversity. There's a stressful experience, something happens in your life to you, to someone else, to your environment, and it triggers some sort of belief. It triggers some sort of thought process. And as a result of this belief, not really the adversity itself, yoga would say, but as a result of this belief, we start to become quite negative. We start having negative thoughts. Chapter 131 in the Yoga Sutras actually takes us through a beautiful sequence of that dukkha dharmanasya angame jayatva shwasa prashwasaha vikshepasaha bhuvaha. So when we become negative in our thinking, disturbed, chitta vikshepa, the sutras say we get these symptoms. Our breath becomes uneven. We start to fidget with our bodies. Then our thoughts become negative, and finally we drop into a state of full depression. So before that all happens, if you can catch the negativity at the point of even your breath changing as a yogi, and also teaching your students, of course, if you can catch it there, you can avoid this negative thinking. But if you get to the point where your body is moving around, you're getting agitated and your mind's getting negative, it's important to dispute those negative thoughts. And if you manage to do that, if you manage to practice pratipaksha bhavanam, this replacing the negative with something positive, then Dr. Seligman says you'll have this feeling of energization, elation, positive emotional effect. The aim of positive psychology is to begin to catalyze a change in the focus of psychology from preoccupation with repairing the worst things in life to also building positive qualities. So this is a big shift. Dr. Seligman, Dr. Csikszentmihalyi, his work on flow, very related to yoga ideas as well. This was a big shift in psychology around the time I went to Chennai to study yoga therapy. So this was all developing at the same time, and I've been very affected by this. The other piece that I have found extremely useful for myself and also for my students is Byron Katie's The Work. Because the question arises, how do I dispute these negative thoughts? So in yoga, we might replace a negative thought with a positive one, and I'm going to give you an experience of that. But if you're, working in a different way, for example, you're having a discussion with a counselor about your work, your issue, what you're upset about, or you're journaling about it. Not doing a physical practice, but more of a contemplative practice. How can you work with that in a contemplative way? So I'll bring you into the body shortly, but let's just look at this. So she has 4 questions, and then there's a turnaround. There's a way of doing Pratipakshabhavana, turning it around. So the first question is this true? So I'm going to give you an example. So the example is you leave home for work and you realize that you forgot to lock the door. And there's a belief that arises. So there's the adverse experience, the A. The belief is the B. The belief that arises is someone's going to break into my house. So you ask the question, is this true? And you might say, I'm not sure, not necessarily. So she wants you to say yes or no. So you might answer, yes, this belief is true. Someone could break in. You might say that. And then she says, can you absolutely know it's true? And most of us in this situation would say, no, I can't absolutely know it's true because it's possible that no one's going to break in. Actually, if I look at the facts, no one has broken into my place ever before. I live in a small town. Those sorts of things don't happen. Actually, I leave my place open all the time and no one's ever broken in. How do you react? What happens when you believe the thought? When you believe the thought, someone is going to break into my house because I left the door open. And you probably will say, I feel stressed, my breath gets short, my thoughts get negative, I start feeling agitated, my stomach hurts, you might have somatic experiences, I get a headache, I stop working efficiently. So that chapter 247 Yoga Sutra, that balance between letting go of unnecessary tension and acting with efficiency, that disappears. You're no longer in a state of flow, what Dr. Csikszentmihalyi calls flow, ananta samapattabhyam. And then who would you be without that thought? And most of us would say we'd feel at peace, we'd experience shanti, we'd experience santosha. And then Katie asks us, can we cultivate an opposite perspective? Pratipakshabhavana, chapter 233 in the Yoga Sutra. Can we cultivate an opposite perspective? Can we dispute this belief, Martin Seligman, the D? Can we dispute this thought, this belief? Can we turn it around? So for example, rather than if I leave my door open, someone is going to break in today, you could say, I don't know if someone will break in today if I leave my door open. Or you could say, no one is going to break in today because I have no evidence that that has ever happened to me, and the chances are very small. So you try to think about an opposite perspective and notice how you feel. So we're going to move into some practice now, but before we do, I'm just going to get your mind a little ready for this, activate some schema for you. So step one is activating the stressor. So when you're working with yourself or with one of your clients, privately, that is, we're going to look at a group situation in a minute, but privately, have your student activate the stressor. And I really recommend doing this through writing. And you can use, if you go to Byron Katie's website, The Work, she has a wonderful handout called Judge Your Neighbor. And it takes you through this whole process where you just get it all out on paper. You can also do it through a discussion with a counselor or with a yoga therapist, or with a friend for that matter. And then if you're doing some contemplation, really recommend you bring in for your student, for your client, a way to think about the opposite. So that might be a bhavana, a visualization of the opposite. So if the person is feeling, for example, depressed and shut down, you might give a bhavana of the radiant sun. That's also bringing in heat and bringing in openness. And then step three, this is what I'm going to take you through now. And this you can use in a group situation. We're going to pendulate between opposites, the opposites of inhale, exhale, back arch, forward bend, lateral movement side to side, and we'll see where else we go from there. And then as a result of this experience, hopefully you in your own practice and with your client, your students, you'll experience more of this freedom from opposites. The Bhagavad Gita talks about samatvam yoga uchyate. Yoga is called freedom from these opposites, this state of equanimity. So just in review, with a private student, step one, activate the stressor. And I invite you right now, before we do a group class, you can also do this with a group class, activate a stressor just by bringing it to mind. So something you're feeling a bit stressed about, just bring it to mind, and we'll let the yoga practice itself process it. We're going to skip step two right now, the contemplating piece, which is the writing and the discussing. The step three, we're going to do this together right now. We're going to have an experience of pendulating between opposites and see how you feel. So let us get ready to practice, and hopefully we'll have some time at the end to analyze the experience a little bit. So just finding your place. And just feeling your feet as you exhale. And as you inhale, maybe start to bring your arms to the sides, radiating like the sun out of the center of your heart. And then as you exhale, if you like, visualize a waterfall flowing down from the top of your head, down the front, the sides, the back body, the legs, the feet. And actually look at those beautiful feet that help us embody and be present in asanam, in that state of presence. Inhale through the radiance all around you. And exhale, letting go through this waterfall image. Inhale through the radiance. And I'm going to add Yoga Sutra, chapter 136, as we inhale and exhale. Vishokava. Letting go of sorrow. Inhale. Jyotishmati. Filling up with radiance, with light. Exhale, letting go of sorrow. Vishokava. Inhale, radiance. Jyotishmati. Exhale. Vishokava. Jyotishmati. Bringing the hands to the heart and standing right in your center. Samastiti. And place your hands any way that feels good for you to connect to your center in Anjali Mudra, perhaps the hands facing down on the heart center, perhaps connecting with your heartbeat. So withdraw your senses, pratyahara, and start to gaze deep within yourself. And just notice where you're at in this moment. Maybe there's something troubling you. Just notice the quality of your thoughts. We're just going to work on processing any activation within the system by bringing one foot forward, whatever one feels more comfortable. Inhale, arms at the sides in Warrior One, Virabhadrasana with the arms at the side. I'll show side view for you also. And exhale, you're going to do Parshva Uttanasana. You could do this coming to a chair, to blocks, with a bent knee, sliding the arms down, or perhaps more classically. Inhale, bringing the arms to the side as you bend your front knee towards that second toe, opening up to joy. And exhale, letting go of sorrow and pain and dukkham and suffering. Inhale, let joy flow. Exhale, let sorrow go. Inhale, let joy flow. Exhale, let sorrow go. And when you're ready, just coming up in your own time, stepping back if you can to your samastiti. Just take a minute to process in the center this experience, perhaps one hand on the head, the other on the gut, or one hand on the head, the other on the heart. Pick one of those. Samatvam yoga uchyate. Yoga is called equanimity of mind. Samatvam yoga uchyate. Yoga is equanimity beyond polarization, beyond the opposites. Moving to the other side, when you're ready, we're going to do the same thing on this side. I invite you to use two other words if you like, especially that link to your stressor. This is what you do with a private student, is have them actually find words that particularly link with their stressor that they're working with. I'm working with very general ones, joy and sorrow, linking to the Gita and yoga. Inhale, arms at the side, inviting in joy, inviting in light, inviting in something positive. And exhale, letting go of something negative that's troubling you. And if it speaks to you, adding the mantra, inhale, let joy flow. Exhale, let sorrow go. Keep this going. You can say it to yourself, or you can just allow the movement itself to regulate your system. This is the beauty of yoga. We can move beyond cognition just into the body and let it somatically regulate us. The inhale activating and the exhale calming. And when you're finished, coming back to your samsthiti, it's comfortable with your feet together. And again, you can pick a gesture from somatic experiencing, linking the head to the gut, the head to the heart. Just allow this mudra, this gesture, offer some solace, some peace, some santosha, and perhaps moving us towards equanimity. Samatvam yoga uchyate. Samatvam yoga uchyate. Yoga is equanimity of mind. When you're ready, moving into our last set, moving into triangles, and these could be lateral bends, they could be twists, parivriti, and then a forward bend to tie it together. Inhale, arms coming up to the center. This is a beautiful image of pendulation. Exhale, coming to your left or whatever side you like first. Inhale, center. And exhale to the other side. Maybe bringing to mind an image like the scales of justice, a pendulum, a hammock swaying back and forth. Inhale, light, turn on. Exhale, darkness is gone. Inhale, light, turn on. Exhale, darkness is gone. You can keep this going or just use the movement itself to help you somatically process this experience. And finishing up, when you're ready, coming to our last set. Inhale, arms coming up, feeling that radiance all around you. And this time we're going to focus on E-RYT, the source, what is, reality, God, the guru. And exhale, pranidan, surrender, surrendering to what is, letting go of the fruits of our actions, karma yoga, kriya yoga. Inhale, the last step to kriya yoga, E-RYT pranidan. Inhale through that radiance of your heart of what is, and exhale, surrender, letting go. I'm going to add the sutra on the next inhale. Inhale, E-RYT. You can just listen or join. Pranidadva. E-RYT. Pranidadva. E-RYT. Pranidadva. When you're ready, Coming up in your own way, finding your feet standing in the center of the opposites, inviting you to take a gesture of equanimity, balance. You might do the butterfly tapping. You might place the hands at the heart, Anjali Mudra. And just notice any sensations in your body, in your breath, in your mind. Having let go of any unnecessary tension. Shaitilya, with some special effort. Prayatna, chapter 247, Yoga Sutra. Having let go of unnecessary tension with some special, efficient effort, sinking into a state of flow, samapatibhyam. In this state, tato dvandvanapi gataha, the opposites no longer trouble us. When you feel ready, coming out of the practice state, and I'm just going to gently invite you to open your eyes and think about a little bit what we did during this practice for our last minutes together today. If you like, you can lie down and just listen to this part. So hopefully you experienced a little bit through this step 3, this pendulation process. You experienced a little bit of emotional freedom. Let's look at a little bit what we did today. So through the yoga asanas, and I just remind you that the word asana means to be present, asa, to be. So we started with full Tadasana and Samastiti, just arriving, feeling our feet, very affected by David Emerson's work on trauma resilience, really learning to have a body as the first step, finding your feet, finding the ground, grounding, and arriving in the practice. Samastiti, again, even standing pose, arriving in that balance point. And then we moved into some warrior Virabhadrasana with Parshva Uttanasana, the one side at forward bend. Working asymmetrically can help activate one side of the brain at a time. It can be very regulating to work asymmetrically for brain balancing, nervous system balancing. Warrior, again, usually used in yoga practices for creating confidence, creating maybe a little bit of heat to upregulate the nervous system in a container of safety. And then I brought you, after a rest in Samastiti between these practices, I brought you into the center where we did Parshva Trikonasana, Trikonasana, Uttita Trikonasana, Parshva variation lateral. We could also move into Parivriti, as TKV Desgachar teaches, working cross-laterally. And then ending with Uttanasana as a counter pose, of course, but also to down-regulate the system and to reground and let go. These are some of the mantras that I used. I'll just show these to you. You can make up any ones you want that work for your student. I picked ones that were very general. These are the sutras that I used. And again, you could use others. These are ones I've worked with a lot over my 25 years of teaching. And trying to get to that piece of the Gita, the Samatvam, I really invite you to take those pauses in Samastiti, which is a beautiful metaphor for this Samatvam, this harmony between the opposites. Feeling your feet, even standing pose. One hand on the heart or the gut, the other on the head. This I learned from somatic experiencing as a way of processing opposites. So thank you to my student Ali for teaching me about that. And I tend to bring both hands to the heart or an Anjali Mudra as a final way of trying to come right to the center. But again, it will depend on the person. So to end with, I'd like to end with a mantra from the Yajurveda, which is where the key teachings of yoga come from the Vedas, from the Upanishads. And this mantra has within it these opposites, moving from what is untrue to true, from darkness to light, from limitation to freedom, and then ending in peace. So we're going to do this together, and you can listen or you can join in if you know the particular tune that I'm doing. There are many tunes. This is the one that Desichar taught my teachers many years ago. Oh, Asato Ma Satyamaya. Om Tamaso Ma Jyotirgama. Mrityoma Amritangamaya. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om. May we be led from what is untrue to what is true. From darkness or heaviness to light, clarity. From limitation to freedom. And may this state of freedom leave us with peace, Shanti, in our thoughts, in our words, in our actions, in our bodies, in our speech, in our minds. May this Shanti protect us from any dukkham, suffering, darkness, from ourselves, others, or our environment. Namaste, namaskaram. Thank you so much for this opportunity to share.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Maggie. That was wonderful. I want to remind everyone that if you have any questions, that you can place them in the Q&A section and we will get to them as we can. I really appreciated the way you talked about working through the physical practice with the opposites to help realign the mind. I thought that was quite interesting. I have a question, I guess, to get it started until I see some others. I happened to be at dinner with a friend quite recently, not a heavy practitioner of yoga, really not so much. And what she had mentioned is that she understands what her triggers are, but she's stuck in that space. There's that space of, okay, I know what the triggers are, but how do I get to move past it. And I see you nodding your head, so this sounds very familiar from what you hear all the time as well. And I wanted to know if you can, give some advice as it relates to that.
So I think the first thing I'd like to share is what my teacher, Mr. Sridhar, D.V. Sridhar in Chennai, India, told me many years ago, because I come from a background with some developmental trauma, and yoga helped me get to a place where I was actually able to look at that finally, after about 15 years of very intensive practice. And I finally got to a place where, there it was. And what he said to me, he said, there's two things. One is, who cares if you cry easily? Who cares if you're emotional? Right? Like right now, I'm about to cry. My husband, who's come today, he knows I cry very easily. My students have seen it.
Oh.
And then he said, and I can help you. So that was the most important thing that I learned, is accepting, that shame resilience that we read about in the literature, and, really accepting where we're at and then working with it. So he gave me a very particular pranayama practice with Chandrabedna, moon breathing, and all these neuro-linguistic pieces that I say, like I was teaching you today, that have helped me tremendously gradually become stronger. The other piece that I learned mainly from my counselor, but also from the yoga tradition, relationship. We heal in relationship, that relationship with my teachers, that relationship with my students, that relationship with my dear husband, that relationship with my dear friends, that relationship with my family, that holds me. Right.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I just going to take a look here. I see someone is asking if you could share, Mari is asking if you can share the first mantra slide again.
The first mantra slide. Okay. Which one is the first?
Mari, I don't know if you can elaborate. Is there
maybe I'll just I think it's, oh yes, Sthira Sukha Masanam. Yeah, that was the first one. So that's a Yoga Sutra, chapter 246. Sthira is strength, Sukham is softness. What my teacher, D.V. Sridhar, says is, can we be attentive without being tense? And can we be soft without being lazy? So even within that, he's bringing the next sutra, which says you practice these by letting go of any unnecessary tension. So in your practice, whenever you notice tension in your body, in your breath, in your mind, invite your body, breath, mind to let go. And then my experience is, I have shaking, I have other things that happen that I've read about in trauma work that just naturally arise, and the nervous system lets go.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We are at our time here, and I really appreciate your time with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Marita, for hosting, and for everyone, Global Yoga Therapy Day. I'm looking forward to coming to the next practice now that I've finished my session. Thank you so much.